Why did the laughter stop the moment the gate scanner beeped? She stood at the checkpoint with dust clinging to her boots and sunlight cutting sharp lines across her face. Her hands moved calmly, not hurried, not defensive, just precise. The kind of movement learned through years of discipline, not desperation. The guard barely looked at her. He chewed his gum, leaned back, and smirked like the world had already told him who mattered and who didn't. He laughed first, others followed. They thought she was lost, or broken, or slow. They didn't hear the silence she carried like a weapon. Her fingers shaped meaning in the air: authorization, inspection, command, but to them it looked like weakness. The guard waved her off, said something cruel. Someone behind him mimicked her hands. Another man laughed too loudly, the way people do when they want to feel taller. She didn't flinch. Inside, something tightened. Not fear, not anger, just awareness. The kind that comes from knowing exactly how much patience you have left. The sun beat down. Diesel fumes hung low. The base looked ordinary. That was the danger of it. Ordinary places hide rot better than war zones. She reached into her jacket and held out the black card. No rank, no shine, just matte plastic. The guard scoffed, tossed it into the scanner without looking. The screen changed. Green. Then red. Then a tone, sharp, unmistakable, final. Chief clearance, Alpha tier. The laughter died mid-breath. The guard straightened. Someone swore under their breath. Another stepped back like the ground had shifted. She walked past them without saying a word. And for the first time that day, the base felt smaller than she was. She had come here to find a leak, but she already knew the truth. The betrayal wasn't hiding, it was laughing at the gate. How long can someone stay calm when every step is meant to humiliate them? Inside the perimeter, the tests began. Subtle at first, parking maneuvers meant to trap her, delays disguised as protocol, a truck revering too close, a door that closed too slowly, every inconvenience carefully calibrated to provoke. She noticed everything. License plates, unauthorized passengers, improper loadouts, small violations stacked like bricks. She remembered them all. When a soldier tried to scare her with a barking dog, she didn't step back. She lowered her hand once, firm, deliberate. The animal obeyed her instantly. Authority recognizes authority, even when humans pretend not to. That unsettled them. They escalated. Hands grabbed her bag. Personal items spilled onto concrete. Someone held up her implant battery like it was a joke, tossing it between them. They laughed. She caught it midair without looking, panicked, without shaking. That moment should have warned them. But bullies mistake restraint for surrender. In the briefing room, the lights dimmed too much. Voices sped up too fast. Chairs loosened. Equipment sabotaged. Every trick designed to isolate her, to make her doubt herself. She adapted. Balanced on a broken chair for an hour without moving. Read lips in the dark using tech they didn't know existed. Memorized serial numbers while pretending to take notes. She wasn't fighting them. She was documenting them. Still, the loneliness crept in. In quiet moments, it always does. When the room turns cold and no one meets your eyes. When cruelty becomes routine. She felt it then. A flicker of old doubt. A memory of other rooms. Other dismissals. Other days when silence felt heavy instead of powerful. She pushed it down. Mission first, always. Because somewhere in this base, someone was selling secrets. And the people laughing were either careless or complicit. What happens when mockery turns into fear? The ops center smelled like hot circuits and stale coffee. Screens glowed. Data flowed. She worked quietly, fingers moving faster than most voices. They hovered behind her, commented, joked. One tried to freeze her terminal remotely. Another scrambled her keyboard. She closed her eyes, adjusted, continued typing without slowing. That was when the breach alert hit. Read across every screen. Panic rippled, officers shouted, someone accused her instantly. That hurt more than the noise, to be useful only until trouble arrives, then blamed. She stepped forward anyway. 7 seconds. That's all it took. She cracked the encryption because she had written part of it years ago, because she remembered patterns others forgot, because silence had trained her to notice what sound distracted them from. The room went quiet again, not mocking this time. Threatened. Hands grabbed her arm, too hard, too familiar. She broke the grip without violence, just physics and control. Someone lied, said she attacked first. She pointed to the camera. The red recording light blinked steadily. Truth doesn't shout, it waits. They doubled down. Accusations turned frantic. Orders barked. MPs called. A plan formed to remove her before the truth finished unfolding. She stood still. Inside, her heart beat harder now. Not fear, resolve. The kind that comes when there's no room left to retreat. She knew who was on the other end of that phone call. And she knew what time it was. Why does power always arrive right before cruelty becomes irreversible? The rotors hit first. The sound cut through everything. A general walked in. No theatrics, no delay. One sentence changed everything. Marine Intelligence Chief. The words landed like weight. Faces drained, postures collapsed, hands that had threatened now shook. She didn't gloat, didn't smile, didn't explain. She showed them. Video, audio, logs, bets placed on her humiliation, transfers, messages, evidence layered so thick denial suffocated under it. Arrests followed, patches torn, careers ended in real time. Some begged, some blamed each other, some stayed silent, finally understanding the value of it. She corrected one technician's code before leaving, quietly, kindly, because leadership isn't about punishment alone. A young private signed sorry, clumsily, honestly. She accepted it. Not everything broken needs to be destroyed. What does redemption look like when no apology can erase what was done? Promotion came without ceremony, authority without applause. As she boarded the helicopter, the base stood silent, not out of fear, out of understanding. Silence, when chosen, can be respect. She looked back once, at the gate, at the place where laughter had tried to define her. It hadn't worked. The helicopter lifted, systems tagged her departure. One final message flashed on the control tower screen. Silent watcher, mission complete. She rested her hands, finally. Because dignity doesn't need to shout. Sometimes it simply acts. Why did the air inside the base feel heavier than the heat outside? She noticed it the moment she crossed the gate. Not tension exactly, something thicker, like a room where too many secrets had learned how to breathe. The laughter from outside faded behind her, but it didn't disappear. It followed her, echoed in glances, in pauses that lasted a second too long, in doors that didn't open right away. She adjusted the strap of her duffel and kept walking. Every step was measured, not cautious, intentional. She had learned long ago that people who wanted to break you watched for hesitation, so she gave them none. The first test came before she even reached the admin corridor. A transport truck reversed suddenly, its backup alarm screaming into the air. The bumper stopped inches from her door, sealing her inside the rental car like an oven. Two soldiers sat high in the cab, laughing, waiting for panic, for a horn, for anger. She didn't give them that. She slid across the console, exited through the passenger side, and stood up calmly, the heat washing over her like a wave she refused to acknowledge. As she walked away, she memorized the vehicle number, the unauthorized civilian sitting beside the driver, the casual breach no one thought mattered. It always mattered. She had learned that leaks didn't start with traitors. They started with people who thought rules were optional. The checkpoint ahead shimmered in the sun. Gravel crunched under boots. A guard leaned against the barrier, gums snapping, eyes already bored. When she raised her hands and began signing, his expression changed, not to confusion, but to amusement. That was worse. He said something crude. Another guard laughed. A third mimicked her hands wildly, turning language into mockery. She felt the familiar tightening in her chest. Not pain, memory. She slowed her signs, clarified, repeated. They waved her away. She could have spoken then, forced her voice out rough and imperfect just to end it. That was the temptation, to adapt for their comfort, to shrink herself so they didn't have to grow. She didn't. When the K9 lunged at her, barking inches from her face, something inside her steadied. Animals didn't care about rank or gender or sound. They cared about certainty. She gave it to him in a single, controlled motion. The dog sat. The handler's smile vanished. That was when the guard stepped closer. Too close. Clipboard held high, laughter sharp in public now. He wanted her small, wanted a crowd. She bent, picked up the clipboard, dusted it off slowly, looked at the serial number on his weapon, noted the illegal modification, filed it away. She was already dismantling him. He just didn't know it yet. Inside the base, the maze began. Signs were missing, corridors looped. Construction barriers funneled her the long way around. A jeep followed at walking speed, engine revving, smoke blown deliberately into her path. She navigated by memory alone. Sun angle, wind direction. The schematics she'd studied weeks ago. She turned down what looked like a dead end and emerged exactly where she needed to be. 10 minutes early. That annoyed them. In the corridors, engineers dropped a heavy coil of cable behind her, trying to startle her. She felt the vibration before it hit the ground, stepped over it without breaking stride, didn't even look back. The absence of reaction unsettled them more than fear ever could. By the time she reached the admin building, the hostility had evolved. It was quieter now, sharper, bureaucratic. The receptionist didn't offer a pen, pointed to a trash bin instead, suggested deliveries went out back, spilled water on her paperwork and shrugged. Rules are rules. She bypassed her terminal with a flash drive from her wristband. Her profile filled the main screen. Clearance verified. Check-in complete. The receptionist's smile collapsed. She tried again. A neon escort badge, bright, humiliating, designed to announce inadequacy to everyone who passed. She flipped it over, wrote a code, tapped it once. VIP access. The badge clattered back onto the desk. Silence stretched between them. By the time she entered the briefing room, the rumors had arrived before her. Eyes tracked her. Whispers moved faster than footsteps. Alpha team sat together, loud, confident, young enough to mistake cruelty for strength. She took a seat in the back. When she raised her hand to sign a question, someone whispered loudly about traffic signals. Laughter rippled. The instructor dismissed her without looking. She wrote anyway. A chair leg cracked when someone kicked it. She adjusted her balance instantly, holding herself perfectly still for an hour. Muscles burning, face calm, notes steady. This wasn't new. Pain had always been quieter for her than for others. When the lights dimmed too low, she activated her lenses. Read lips. Logged weapon serials glowing warm against regulation. Counted violations like heartbeats. She felt the isolation then. The real kind. The kind that slips past discipline and settles in the ribs. The knowledge that no one would step in. That silence today was being used against her. She remembered another room. Years ago. Another mission. A team that had trusted her hands when radios failed and sound died in gunfire. That memory kept her spine straight. After the briefing, a red laser danced across her fingers from behind. Someone snickered, treated her hands like a toy. She reflected the beam back without turning around. A yelp, a dropped pointer. She kept walking. In the mess hall, they ignored her in line, served others first, slopped food onto her tray deliberately, spilling it onto her hand. Soldiers moved tables when she sat down, isolation weaponized. A junior officer placed a dirty cup on her table, mistook her for staff. She summoned a cleaning drone with a tap. It announced the officer's name as the source of contamination. Laughter broke out despite attempts to suppress it. Control wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was procedural. Later, the waxed floor, hidden signs waiting for the fall. She adjusted her gait and crossed it like ice, kicking the warning sign back into view behind her. Correction without confrontation. By afternoon, the ops center buzzed with quiet sabotage. Comments, jokes, fingers hovering too close to her equipment. Someone changed her keyboard mapping mid-task. She adapted in seconds. That was when the prank call came through the speakers, mocking, rooted internally, designed to humiliate. She traced it silently, activated the webcam, projected the caller's face onto the wall. The room froze. The laughter died. She didn't speak, didn't accuse. She just let truth stand in the open. And for the first time since she arrived, she saw something flicker across their faces. Not respect. Fear. Because they were starting to realize something far more dangerous than rank or authority. She wasn't reacting to them. She was recording them. And whatever she was building in silence, it wasn't for forgiveness. What do you do when the room turns on you, and you realize it always planned to? The temperature dropped before anyone said a word, not enough to justify complaints, just enough to sting, enough to make fingers stiff, enough to test whether her hands would shake. She noticed it instantly. A deliberate adjustment, localized, targeted. She didn't look up. Instead, she increased the computational load on her workstation. Fans spun, heat vented, a quiet pocket of warmth bloomed beneath the desk, not defiance, adaptation. Someone frowned at the thermostat. She kept working. The breach alert returned, this time real. Not a drill, not sabotage disguised as protocol. Red warnings crawled across the main screen like blood seeping through fabric. Voices rose, chairs scraped. Panic spread fast in rooms where authority was fragile. "It's her," someone said, too quickly, too eagerly. She felt that one land deeper than the rest. Being blamed is a particular kind of loneliness, especially when competence is the very thing that makes people fear you. She stepped forward anyway. 7 seconds. That was all she needed. Her hands flew, commands stacked, a cipher unraveled. The intrusion revealed itself not as an outside attack, but an internal one. Someone on the inside had left a door open, on purpose. The room went quiet again. This time it wasn't mockery or fear. It was calculation. A hand grabbed her arm, hard, too hard. A voice accused her of staging the breach, of playing hero, of manipulating systems she couldn't possibly understand. The accusation was louder than the truth. It usually is. She broke the grip with a small turn of the wrist. No violence, just leverage and balance. The man stumbled, humiliated by how little effort it took. He tried to recover by lying. "She attacked me." She didn't sign a defense. She pointed. The camera's red light blinked. Recording. The lie collapsed under its own weight. That should have been the end of it. Instead, it escalated. They circled her now, words overlapping, authority used like a shield, orders barked without clarity. Someone called for military police. Someone else blocked the door. The room felt smaller, hotter, dangerous. She stood still. Inside, her heart thudded harder now, not with fear, but with resolve, the kind that comes when there is nowhere left to retreat and no reason to try. She knew who the MP commander was. She had trained him. She waited. A lieutenant tried to destroy her notes, fed pages into a shredder with a smile, thought she was erasing evidence. She watched the paper disappear without expression. Her phone vibrated once. Cloud sync complete. She had learned long ago never to trust a single copy of the truth. Another man approached with zip ties, snapped them together, letting the sound speak for him, threatened her hands. The threat was precise, cruel, aimed at identity, not flesh. That one hurt. Not because she was afraid, but because it was familiar. She shifted her stance, lowered her center, prepared. Then the speakers crackled. "Attention all personnel. General Wren is on approach. ETA 1 minute. Stand down." Time stopped. The zip ties froze midair. Rotor blades thundered outside. Dust shook the windows. A presence arrived that didn't need to announce itself twice. General Wren entered with no ceremony. His eyes went straight to her. "Who authorized touching Chief Winford?" The word chief detonated through the room. Faces drained of color, postures collapsed, authority evaporated in real time. She signed to him briefly, efficient, professional. He nodded once. "She's here on my orders." No one laughed now. What followed wasn't shouting, it was procedure, arrests, patches torn away, hands cuffed. Careers ended not with drama but with documentation. Some begged, some blamed each other, some went silent, finally understanding the cost of it. She showed them the footage, the mockery, the betting pool, the messages. Their cruelty played back without commentary. "This is who you were," the screen read. Not an accusation. A mirror. One technician cried when she handed him corrected code he'd been struggling with for months. He whispered thanks like it hurt to say. A young private stepped forward, hands trembling, and signed an awkward apology. She accepted it. Not everyone deserved forgiveness, but some deserved a chance to learn. A colonel entered then, signed fluently, stood beside her without hesitation. "She's not alone," he said. For the first time all day, she felt something loosen in her chest. She had been strong all day. Now she felt seen. As the helicopter waited, promotion papers came through, quietly, without applause, authority without spectacle. She turned back once, straightened a soldier's collar, signed 2 words. "Be better." The helicopter lifted. Below, the base fell silent, not in defiance but in understanding. And as the screen in the control tower flashed her final status message, it wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. "Silent watcher, mission complete." Because dignity doesn't demand recognition. Sometimes it simply endures, until the truth has no choice but to arrive. What breaks first when power is exposed? Pride, loyalty, or fear? The helicopter had barely lifted when the quiet inside her finally caught up. Not relief, not yet, something heavier. The delayed weight of a day spent absorbing blows without showing the bruises. The kind of exhaustion that settles in the bones, not the muscles. She watched the base shrink beneath the spinning rotors, lines and buildings turning abstract, people becoming shapes. She flexed her fingers slowly. They were steady, still. Across from her, the colonel watched without speaking. He had known her long enough to understand when silence was not emptiness, but processing. "You all right?" he signed gently, not in command but concern. She nodded, then hesitated. "I will be," she signed back. Because strength wasn't about never cracking. It was about choosing when you could afford to. They landed at a forward command hub 30 miles away. Cleaner, quieter, no rumors yet, just purpose. Inside, the screens were already lit. The leak hadn't been isolated to one base. That was the part she hadn't said out loud yet. Patterns rarely stop where they're discovered. They radiate. They infect. She took her seat, pulled up timelines, cross-referenced logs. And there it was. A gap, 4 minutes, buried inside routine data transfers, too small to notice unless you were listening for absences instead of noise. Her jaw tightened. Someone had learned how to hide in plain sight. She signed rapidly, briefing the room. This time no one laughed, no one interrupted. The difference was sharp enough to sting. But respect earned in a crisis is fragile. She knew that too. A junior analyst hesitated before speaking. "Chief, if the leak predates the arrests, then some of them might still be active." She nodded. "Yes." The room absorbed that. Trust is a delicate thing in intelligence work. Break it once and everything becomes suspect. Every colleague a potential risk. Every silence a question. She felt the old loneliness creep back in. Because when you see too clearly, you stand apart whether you want to or not. Hours passed. Coffee cooled untouched. Screens refreshed endlessly. She barely moved. At some point, she noticed the faint tremor in her left hand. Fatigue. She clenched it once, released. "Not now." The colonel returned with updated flight logs. She scanned them once, twice. Then stopped. Her breath caught just slightly. A name appeared where it shouldn't have. Someone she trusted. Someone who had once trusted her. Memory surged uninvited. A night mission, years ago, radios dead. Enemy movement felt through the ground. She had warned them with signs and taps, vibrations felt through her boots. He had followed without question. They had survived because of that trust. She swallowed. This was the cost no one prepared you for. Catching enemies is easy. Catching friends is not. She didn't accuse, didn't confront. She built the net quietly, let behavior reveal itself the way it always did when pressure mounted. And it did. A delayed response here, a misfiled report there, nothing criminal alone, devastating together. When she finally briefed the general, she kept her tone flat, professional. He saw the pause anyway. "You know him," he said. She nodded once. "I did." Authorization came quickly, clean, legal, cold. She watched the arrest from another room. No theatrics, no resistance, just disbelief. He looked at her through the glass, hurt replacing anger when he realized she had been right. She didn't look away. Because mercy without accountability isn't mercy, it's permission. Later alone, she sat with that truth. Her implant battery chimed softly, low power. She swapped it out carefully, the small ritual grounding her, hands doing something familiar. She thought about the soldiers from the base, the ones who laughed, the ones who stayed silent, the one who signed sorry. They were all part of the same system, flawed, human. So was she. That didn't excuse them. But it reminded her why she stayed. A message came through from the colonel, a single line. "They're asking for you by name now." She exhaled slowly. Being needed isn't the same as being accepted. But it's a start. She stood and looked at her reflection in the dark screen. No uniform shine, no dramatic scars, just tired eyes and steady hands. She straightened her jacket. Tomorrow, she would walk back onto that base. Not as an investigator. As their commander. And this time, the silence wouldn't be aimed at her. It would follow her. Because authority, when carried quietly, changes the air before it changes the rules. And she was just getting started. What does it feel like to return to the place that tried to erase you, this time with everyone watching? The convoy slowed as it approached the gate. Same dust, same sun, same stretch of concrete where laughter had once tried to decide her worth. Only now, the gate rose before the vehicle even stopped. Salutes snapped into place, not exaggerated, not performative, real, a fraction of a second late maybe, but sincere enough to matter. She stepped out. The air felt different, not kinder, not safer, just alert. as if the base itself had learned to hold its breath. She adjusted her jacket and walked forward. Every footstep echoed with memory, the clipboard hitting the dirt, the laser dot on her hands, the zip ties snapping together. She didn't push those images away. She let them walk with her, unarmed but present. Inside the admin building, conversation stopped when she passed, not out of fear alone, out of recalibration. People were relearning where to place their eyes. She didn't rush them. Fear fades quickly, habits take longer. In the briefing room, she stood at the front now. No podium, no dramatic entrance, just presence. She signed her opening words slowly, allowing the interpreter's voice to lag half a second behind her hands. "This base failed," the voice said. No accusation, no raised volume. A few people stiffened. She continued. "It failed because people chose comfort over responsibility, silence over courage, mockery over discipline." Her hands moved with precision, each sign clean, unrushed. "I am not here to punish the past. I am here to correct the future." That landed harder than any threat. She outlined new protocols, accountability measures, mandatory training, anonymous reporting channels, clear consequences, nothing theatrical, nothing personal. Systems don't change through humiliation. They change through consistency. As she spoke, she noticed small things: a soldier in the back nodding once, another straightening their posture, someone swallowing hard. Not everyone would stay, some would transfer, some would resent her quietly. She accepted that. Leadership wasn't about being liked. It was about being clear. After the briefing, she walked the base alone. She stopped at the gate, the same spot, gravel still uneven where boots had shifted impatiently. She crouched and brushed dust from her palm. No one laughed. A young guard approached, nervous, new. "Ma'am," he said, voice steady but tight. I learned some signs, not many, but—" He raised his hands awkwardly, signed her name, clumsy, earnest. She felt something loosen in her chest. She corrected his hand shape gently, signed back. "Good start." His shoulders dropped in relief. Later in the ops center, she sat at the same terminal they had tried to take from her. The chair was fixed now, the lights balanced, the temperature neutral. She worked. Hours passed without interruption, without sabotage, without jokes whispered too loud. Progress doesn't announce itself. It just happens. Near midnight, she finally paused. Fatigue pressed in again. This time, she didn't push it away. She leaned back, closed her eyes. That was when it hit her. Not the anger, not the betrayal. The grief. For the version of herself that had stood at the gate and been laughed at. For the years she had spent proving, over and over, that silence was not absence. For the energy it took to be excellent just to be tolerated. Tears blurred her vision, just for a moment. She let them fall. No one was watching. When she wiped her face, her hands were steady again. A soft knock sounded. The colonel stepped in, no rank in his posture, just familiarity. "You did good today," he signed. She shook her head slightly. "Necessary," she signed back. He smiled, "Still counts." They stood in silence for a while, comfortable, rare. "You know," he added, "they'll talk about this base someday, about what changed." She glanced at the screens, the data flowing smoothly, the quiet hum of systems doing their job. "Let them," she signed, "as long as it works." Before he left, he hesitated. "They listen to you," he said, "even when you don't speak." She considered that. Later, alone again, she packed her bag. Same duffel, same worn edges, same book inside. As she zipped it closed, her tablet chimed. A message from the private who had signed sorry. Just 2 words. "Thank you." She stared at it longer than necessary. Then replied with one sign captured on camera. "Learned." She powered down the lights and stepped outside. The base was quiet, not oppressive, resting. Stars stretched overhead, indifferent and constant. She breathed in the night air and felt something unfamiliar. Peace. Not complete, not permanent, but real. Tomorrow would bring resistance, paperwork, politics, doubt. It always did. But tonight, the silence belonged to her. And for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel like something she had to fight against. It felt like something she had earned. Because strength doesn't always arrive with noise. Sometimes it arrives quietly and stays. What remains after the noise is gone, and no one is left to underestimate you. Dawn came slowly over the base, pale and indifferent like it always had. The same sun rose over the same concrete. The same flag stirred in the same dry wind. But something underneath it all had shifted, subtle and permanent, the way bedrock changes after pressure finally releases. She stood alone on the balcony outside the command office, watching the horizon lighten. No escort, no announcement, just boots on concrete and the quiet hum of a place waking up. For the first time since she arrived, she wasn't being watched. That realization surprised her. Being unseen had once meant danger, now it meant trust. She rested her hands on the railing, scarred knuckles, steady fingers, tools that had carried her through firefights, interrogations, code rooms, and long nights where silence was the only thing louder than fear. Her implant vibrated softly, fully charged. She smiled at that just barely, a small, practical victory. Inside, the base was already moving differently. Radios stayed professional. Guards rotated without theatrics. Logs were filed on time, not perfect, not saintly, just better. Better was enough. She spent the morning reviewing personnel files, not looking for enemies this time, looking for potential, for the quiet ones, the overlooked, the people who did their jobs without needing applause. She reassigned roles, promoted 2 analysts who had never raised their voices but never missed a detail, transferred 1 officer who resisted every correction, not as punishment, as prevention. Leadership, she knew, wasn't about breaking people. It was about placing them where they couldn't break others. At mid-morning, a young corporal knocked on her door, hesitated, then entered. "Ma'am," he said, nervous but composed, "I wanted to request permission." She nodded. He swallowed, "To enroll in ASL training on my own time." She searched his face, not for guilt, for sincerity. She signed once. Approved. Relief washed over him like he'd been holding his breath for days. After he left, she sat back and allowed herself one long exhale. Change doesn't arrive all at once. It arrives in choices. By afternoon, the final reports came in, arrests processed, charges formalized, evidence secured, the betting pool dismantled, accounts frozen, careers ended not by outrage but by paperwork. Justice, she had learned, was rarely cinematic. But it was final. The general called her late in the day, congratulated her, offered commendations, asked if she wanted a statement issued. She declined. "Let the silence speak," she signed. He understood. As evening approached, she walked the base one last time before nightfall, not inspecting, remembering. The gate, the mess hall, the corridor where someone had tried to trip her, the ops room where truth had finally cornered arrogance. She stopped at each place, not to reclaim it, but to release it. None of it owned her anymore. Near the hangar, she saw a small group of soldiers practicing signs together, laughing quietly, correcting each other. No mockery, no audience. She didn't interrupt. Some lessons work best when no one is grading them. When night fell, she returned to her office and packed for departure. Another mission awaited, another place with its own shadows. The work never really ended. She placed the worn paperback into her bag, ran her fingers along its spine, a habit from years ago, something grounding. Before leaving, she turned off the lights and stood in the dark for a moment. Once, darkness had been used against her. Now it felt neutral, honest. She locked the door and stepped into the night. The helicopter waited on the pad, rotors idle, pilot patient. As she approached, a handful of soldiers stood at attention. No orders had been given, no ceremony planned. They just did it. She returned the salute. In the air, as the base shrank beneath them again, she felt the last of the tension drain from her shoulders. Not victory, something quieter. Closure. She thought about the girl she had once been, the one who learned early that sound wasn't guaranteed. That attention had to be earned twice. That dignity often arrived late, if at all. She wished she could tell her this. You won't always be believed at first. You won't always be protected. But if you hold your ground long enough, truth will eventually have nowhere left to hide. The helicopter banked east, stars scattered across the windshield. She closed her eyes. Not to escape. To rest. Because tomorrow would demand clarity again, strength, restraint, the discipline to lead without becoming what once tried to crush her. But tonight, she allowed herself one final thought. Silence had never made her weak. It had taught her how to listen when others were too busy talking. And in a world obsessed with noise, that had made all the difference. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.